Darria.
Hey, what's up? This is BreakmanX, and welcome to the bonus episode of the game show on May 20th, 2025. And I'm here with Bob from RetroRGB. How are you doing, sir?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to have a fun, lighthearted conversation. If you don't know, I'm guessing most of you do know, but RetroRGB is a website with corresponding YouTube, podcast, and social media accounts dedicated to highlighting the people and projects in the retro gaming scene. The main section of the website is a review and news blog. However, we also feature interviews, modding guides, and a weekly podcast that sums up everything that's been going on in the scene. Bob started the site with his cousin Scott in late 2011. The site was originally a shared Google Doc that they thought a few friends might be interested in, but after a suggestion from Scott, became RetroRGB. Bob's career has been filled with jobs that focused on sales engineering, tech writing, and computer hardware design, making the challenges of RetroRGB's guides a perfect fit. And you can follow RetroRGB with that username on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. The game show is a celebration of video games and our collective interests mixed with a healthy dose of humor while bringing in our favorite people in the game and movie industries on as guests. And today's a little bit unusual. It's just me, so you'll have to deal with me and Bob today, but we're going to have a lot of fun. If you want to join in on the conversation, you can just type below here on the YouTube chat, or if you want to go to BreakmanX.com and click Discord, you can also talk to us there. It all goes to the same place. Logan, who normally watches the chat, isn't here, so I'll do my best to keep my eyes on all things. But with that said, let's kick it off here. So, Bob, how did it all get started? How did you get into gaming, and when did you know it was a passion of yours?
Well, I mean, I guess I was just always kind of into gaming. I mean, the first time I saw an arcade machine at like a restaurant or something like that, I think it was an Outrun, probably was the first one that I remember seeing, because I always loved cars and driving and watched Knight Rider every chance I could. And so that kind of, I think, was what really got me into it. Then we eventually got an NES, and I always loved that one, and then I just always kind of stuck with it. And then in the early 90s, I think 94 or something, I actually got into game emulation on PCs and started a website about everything that was going on in the emulation scene. So it's basically RetroRGB 1.0 for software emulation. And I kind of I stuck with it till like the end of high school, and then, life kicked in. But I always sort of paid attention to the emulation scene and everything else, and new video games, of course, as well. But I really just liked side-scrolling adventure games, Metroidvanias, stuff like that. So while the newer games were awesome, I mostly, especially once I started traveling, I stuck with the older style, even on the Game Boy Advance, DS, stuff like that. And eventually I swung back around when the Wii came out, and I started playing the virtual console games. I thought, I wonder if they make controller adapters. And I got one, and I didn't realize it was super laggy at the time, but it didn't feel right. And so I just kind of tried to take it to the next level. And I got couple old CRTs, and I thought I was done. And then I remembered, back in the 90s, somebody mentioned RGB. I should look into that. And there was just scattered info across tons of forums. Most of it was absolutely wrong, or not, if not wrong, just bad. Like, it'll work, but you shouldn't do it. So cousin Scott and I, we were just talking about that. And so I think I could figure this out. And I had a job at the time that was, I worked from home. I had to be in front of the computer from 8 to 5 every day, but it was a lot of like click and wait, wait for things to, software images to render, wait for things to, and I am hyperactive, so that was just like torture. So I basically started a band and started RetroRGB around the same time, just to try to compile this info together, and here we are.
Oh, nice. When you started playing retro games again, was there a particular game that brought you back in, or was it just kind of in general?
So it was my friend Justin, aka Goodwill Hunter, who doesn't really do videos on YouTube anymore, but he used to go to different Goodwills before everybody else on the planet did it, and started to get good deals on older video games. And then he started watching Angry Video Game Nerd, and that was kind of my gateway drug back into taking it a little more seriously. Because I just, I always loved Super Nintendo and Genesis games, and a bunch of the NES games, but that was really what made, like, kind of lit the fire again. Like, you know what, this isn't just an occasional thing. I actually really do like this stuff. So that was kind of what got me back in.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Well, since we started talking into RetroRGB a little bit, when did you start to realize that RetroRGB was becoming like a popular site? Obviously, it started off as a Google Doc and then a website. When did it start to kind of pick up steam?
Oddly enough, right away, because while I'd always made websites before, I kind of was just winging it, and everybody was telling me that the way I was doing it was wrong, and you'll never get, Google search results if you do it that way. But from the moment the site went up, I was always in the top couple hits on Google search results. So, maybe a month after it went live, like, I didn't make any effort to promote it. I just assumed 0 people were seeing it, so I still had time to work stuff out. And I went to Google something, and I accidentally Googled RetroRGB and just saw tons of forum posts of people telling me how much of a fucking idiot I am. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know anybody knew the site existed. But apparently right away it started popping up in Google search results. And I was like, okay, a couple of those pages aren't even done, so that they're right about that. And then just, the rest of it is just typical internet stuff. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I found it. I believe it was some post about, I think it was screenshots of NBA Jam, and it was comparing it between composite and RGB, and there was a big forum discussion on, like, people, it does, the only way to really play it is through RF, because that's how everyone originally played it, or through composite or whatever. And then people were like, no, you got to play it, and it was like this intense argument back and forth about the quote right way to play.
People like that are complete idiots, because those are the same people that would say, well, if you listen to Metallica tapes on a cheap knockoff Sony Walkman on crappy headphones that used to fall apart, then that's how you should always listen to it. No, absolutely not. If you want to blast in nostalgia to remember what it was like to hear those songs through crappy headphones, sure, but it's the exact same thing. I think the only thing that does matter, that I didn't do a good job the first couple of years getting this point across, but for about a decade now, I hope that I have, is that if you're playing on a CRT, anything is the right way. RF, composite, S-video, component, RGB, all of it is fine on a CRT. The only time it actually matters, that you really want to start bumping up the signals, is when you have to start playing on a flat panel. And the better quality the flat panel and the bigger it is, the more important it is. So, but no, as far as like, you need to only play this way, total BS. Anybody that says that has no idea what they're talking about.
No, I agree with you there. And something we try to talk about too when we talk about games, that, we have preferences on how we play, but however, in my opinion, however you play the game and you enjoy it, to me, that's like the right way to play. Like, if it's an emulator, or you play it on the upcoming Dreamcast VMU from 8-bit mods, like however you play it, I think and you're enjoying it, I think that's the right way. Although,
yeah, the only kind of gray area is when people don't understand the differences. And sometimes it's nobody's fault, but sometimes it's absolutely the fault of companies trying to bottom feed. So like those cheap, crappy plug and play HDMI cables that add a ton of lag to your consoles. Those things, if you understand, hey, I'm on a budget, I just want to play this on my flat panel, it's probably going to be laggy, it might give me a headache from the flicker, but this is what I paid for. So if it's important to me, I'll keep going. Cool. That's totally fine. But when these companies advertise it as like the best solution for your retro games, what mostly happens is people think that the games suck. Yeah. Like, oh, I guess, my friends who told me to play older games were wrong. This isn't for me. Or if you're older like me, it's like, oh, that was rose-colored glasses. It wasn't that good when I was a kid. But no, that's not the game. That's the solution that you're using. So if you're loading up a software emulator on your phone and you can't beat Mega Man, you got to at least, as long as you understand that that's the problem, it's totally fine. It's just when companies try to take advantage of people and present things as the, well, this is the best way to do it when it's total garbage. That's the only time where it gets annoying, because that's when everybody loses, including those companies, by the way, which is what's so baffling. Those garbage cable companies. So they're just losing customers. They're not getting repeat business because a lot of people buy that garbage and then just walk away from retro.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only time that it pisses me off.
Yeah, no, I had an experience with the Mega Man X collection for PS2 because I grew up loving Mega Man X, and I remember plugging it into my TV at the time, and it was just like, this controls terribly, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I didn't even think that my LCD at the time, which was, was one of the earlier LCDs and probably not like the greatest one, had a significant amount of input lag. And to me, it was just like, everyone was saying, oh, retro games aren't as good as you remember them and all this kind of stuff. And so I kind of started to wonder, is that the case? And so it was really nice, of course, playing on a CRT again, but all the great technology that's come out that actually allows you to play even on a modern display with decent amounts of lag is really fabulous. So
yeah, but that's a kind of an issue with all vintage equipment, because let's just say you have the exact CRT and Super Nintendo and cartridges that you had when you were a kid, and you start playing it, it's like, oh, this controls like crap. The rubber membranes in your controller could be going. But that's the same with audio equipment, right? You could buy vintage audio equipment that's phenomenal, and then you turn it on, it's like, oh, that kind of sucks. Well, you might need to change the tubes or the capacitors or something else in it. So I think anybody that, or old cars, right? Oh, this is amazing. I got a 69 Mustang. How come it won't start? Like, you got to just know that this is what you're getting into. And, everything is going to require some kind of refurbishing after some period of time.
Speaking of the membranes, personal question here, but my Super Nintendo, I have the ASCII pad, which I've had since like second or third grade, and it's awesome. But I know it's one of my favorites. But the start button works terribly, and I'm guessing it's a membrane thing. Do you have like membranes or replacement parts for the ASCII pad that you've seen?
No, not at all. And in fact, just getting replacement membranes that are reliable for the Super Nintendo is really hard. And Retro Gamer Store and J&T Studio have worked on replacements for the NES, and I think somebody's going to be doing a video on those kind of soon. I have some here. I just haven't had any time to run them through. So I always try to filter the stuff that people send me to other YouTubers just to not only just spread it around, but also because I don't have time for everything. But if that works out, they're going to try to look into other consoles as well. But getting quality replacement membranes is really hard. And like I was using just yesterday a Retro Flag branded Super Nintendo USB controller. It's actually extremely low latency. It's only like 2 milliseconds or something.
Oh, wow.
But the D-pad's terrible. Like you can't do like Hadoukens in Street Fighter or like Scorpions, teleport move. Like it's just horrible. And it's the case with a lot of third-party controllers. It's just really, really hard to make those consistent quality in bulk for, reasonable prices.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how those old controllers, kind of starting with the NES, really nailed the D-pad. I mean, you think about now how difficult that is to get right, and we all, at least I did, really took that for granted way back then. I mean, you have a controller playing Mario, playing any of those old games. I mean, that could have easily fallen flat if a D-pad was like the ones that we get today. So that's good to hear, because I definitely need to replace my NES membranes as well. I still have all my original controllers from the 80s, and they still work pretty well, but they're definitely getting pretty mushy. So it'd be nice.
It's at the point now where the last couple times I sat down to really like play a Super Nintendo game, I pulled out, I think I have 3 controllers left. I pulled out all 3, and I was like, sucks. Nope, sucks. And then one of them I was like, okay, this is actually good. So this is like, I'm going to save this. All my testing I'm going to do with other controllers. And this one I'm going to actually put this aside and use it when I really just want to sit down and game. And hopefully if J&T ends up making those, I'll be able to just replace them all and not have to worry anymore.
That'd be awesome. I'll be probably picking those up as well. And we got a comment here. Blue Gamer says, great discussion, can totally relate. Thank you, sir. Glad that it's relevant. But so this is a question I've asked to pretty much everybody. I love to hear everyone's responses. They're so different. But if you could experience a game again for the first time, and like you're going to experience it again as you did when you were that age, it's going to be the exact same experience. You don't have to worry about work. There's nothing else in your life that can encroach upon it. what game would that be?
I got to change the question. I'm such a dick. I know. I'm
No,
sorry. But
do it.
When you're a kid and you're experiencing this stuff for the first time, there's so many other aspects involved that make the experience great. Calling cousin Scott at 10 o'clock at night because I found a extra thing in Zelda: A Link to the Past, and getting in trouble from his mom for calling too late, but then he found it too, and we exchanged information. Or the Super Metroid sitting on the floor of my grandparents' house in that tiny little, they had this screened-in porch that with this horrible space heater that had already been recalled in the 70s. It was totally a fire hazard, and you could burn yourself, and I'm huddled in that room and all alone on fighting a bunch of aliens. Like, everything you have in those experiences, everything that's in your life, everything you could relate to, that's what creates those. But and nowadays, if I had never played Super Metroid, right, and I just maybe played a different style. I didn't play, well, here's a perfect example. I never played Symphony of the Night as a kid, and I played it a couple years ago for the first time, and I really liked it. And it was awesome that I got to experience that for the first time. And I thought it was a very cool game, but I also had already played a bunch of Metroidvanias. So that wasn't anything new to me. And the one or two times I got stuck, I just pulled out my phone and, searched, stuck here in Symphony of the Night, and there you go. It was totally an awesome experience, but it would never have made as much of an impact as the first time you play anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if to answer the question, it would be my favorites: Super Metroid, Zelda: A Link to the Past, Mario World, and maybe Sonic, just because those are also really fun games. The only thing about the Sonics was, even as a little kid, I didn't like sitting in front of a TV for hours and hours on end. I like to go outside more than anything else. So, the fact that you couldn't save and go back to the original Sonics was a little annoying, but whatever. So it's those I would absolutely love to, but at the same time, it would never be the same as an adult. Which also, to just move on to nostalgia for a second, that's something I have always said, is nostalgia for people who have played games as a kid. It doesn't matter what the game is, NES, N64, the Wii, whatever. If you played something as a kid and nostalgia brings you back to it as an adult, that's going to last maybe one level past the title screen, right? You plug your cartridge in or your Wii disc or whatever, and you hear the music that you grew up playing as a kid, and you start playing that game, and it's like, oh, this is nice. And if the game sucks, that's it. That's where that ends, period. You're never going to waste hours playing something that sucks now as an adult. So when you come back in, the nostalgia might be the gateway drug, but the games have to be good. And it's exactly the same thing with music, right? If you listen to a song that was made decades before you were born or yesterday, it makes zero difference. When you heard it for the first time, very well might, but when the song was actually recorded, doesn't mean anything. And it's just the same with video games. And that's why there's so many young people who are into retro style games, because some of the best of those style games are older. So that's, somebody that's 17 years old, 20 years old playing these games have zero nostalgia for it. And it's just one of those things that maybe they like. So
That's great. No, I love the answer. It's all, everyone always answers it differently, and I'm always okay with changing the question to make it more relatable. But I would probably have a pretty similar answer to you in terms of the SNES games. Those are all fabulous. I can still remember Super Nintendo, the first time we rented it, and it was raining outside. And so being in the basement playing that, in the beginning it's raining and it's raining out. That was just such an atmospheric, amazing experience. So
yeah. But even on that, right, as a 10-year-old, something like that, probably a little more than that, when I first got an SNES, it was probably 11, 10.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't had the experiences with the NES, those wouldn't have mattered as much. Because now it's just like Mario 3, but you could actually save, and it's better graphics and better levels and no flicker. And, it's same thing with Zelda, right? Now it's, the original Zelda was great, but everything about A Link to the Past was better. So without those, little kid memories and experience, the Super Nintendo stuff wouldn't have been as good.
It's true. Yeah. No, that the NES period for me still has the most nostalgia, and jumping into the SNES period for me was that was to me, and I know going to 32-bit and 3D was the biggest upgrade objectively, But going from NES to SNES to me as a kid was the biggest upgrade because it was everything that I loved about video games, but like better in almost every way. But still pretty much the same type of thing. So
Yeah, I actually think 16 to 32-bit was a step down in many aspects.
oh, really?
With 8-bit games, you still had to use your imagination a lot. And, some of the artwork was phenomenal and still holds up, but you still were using a lot of your imagination. The graphics were still, there was a lot of just solid blue backgrounds or solid black backgrounds. And when you get into the 16-bit era, it was all of that really just honed to near perfection. And then you move on to the 32-bit era and some of the 2D stuff, 2D graphics, they went a little too far with the colors. Now it's a little too colorful and it might not blend in as nice. And the 3D graphics were all like, it's like playing an Atari 2600 game. They're trying it for the first time and some stuff worked and some stuff didn't. So,
yeah.
And I definitely remember thinking that too back then. Like when the N64 came out, so much about it was amazing and so much about it wasn't. And, my friends back then get so annoyed when I said that, but I'm like, yeah, but look at this, look at that, look at the other thing. So yeah, it's just every time a new thing comes out, it needs time to really work itself through.
I'm actually glad to hear you say that. We talked about that a little bit on one of the shows recently, and I felt the same thing. I remember playing Super Mario 64 for the first time, and I can definitely look. It's a super amazingly well-made game, and I enjoy playing it today. But I do remember thinking that this doesn't look as good as the games before it because I just loved sprite artwork and still prefer sprite artwork to 3D. And I actually have this weird. My dad, I remember watching me play the kiosk, and he wasn't into games at all. But I just remember being like, "Hey, look, this is the new thing," and even he was like, "This doesn't look quite as good as," and this was a PlayStation kiosk, but he's like, "This doesn't look quite as good as what you're playing now." So and that was there were some games I loved during that gen, but for me, I wasn't sure if I was getting older or if they just weren't hitting quite the same as the previous gen. So
probably both, but I mean, some were awesome. There were some absolutely incredible games that still hold up, but when you're just playing whatever's at the kiosk, it's hit or miss.
Yeah, no, it was like, I think it was ESPN Extreme Sports or something. So not one of the classics that we would be revisiting now, but yeah, Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, those Star Fox 64 is amazing game. There were a lot of, and Final Fantasy 7 is still my favorite game of all time. So there's definitely great games of that period, but I don't know. I'll always prefer 2D graphics. There's just something about it that grabs me, and I don't know if it's nostalgia that takes me back or what, but I love the 2D. So what you mentioned a couple of the system's consoles so far. What are kind of your absolute favorite, and there can be however many you want. You don't have to say like this is my absolute favorite, but what are just some of the video game console systems that you really enjoy, and why do you like them? What is it about it that appeals to you?
Well, Super Nintendo and Genesis, in part is, definitely nostalgia for part of it, but mostly because of what I was talking about before, is a lot of those 16-bit games were just everything that was great about the 8-bit stuff kind of perfected or near perfected. So that's still the style of game that I really like playing, and there's great ones today. Axiom Verge is phenomenal. I loved those games. I think I like the first one a little bit better, but those were really, really great games. But those are the same style of games that I like to play that you could find on those consoles. So, and the simplicity of a lot of it too. Like, it's kind of hard to find a sports game that you could just pick up and play these days, which, they've certainly gotten better in this generation. But for a while there, you needed a PhD in the game in order to truly understand it. Whereas you play sports talk football, Joe Montana Football 94, as long as you know what football is, you could immediately start playing it.
Yeah.
So those are definitely my go-tos. But I appreciate every good game. I would always appreciate, but if I for the rest of my life, I will always have a Super Nintendo and a Genesis on display somewhere in my house.
Yeah.
Hopefully with a CRT still hooked up to it, and those will always be there. And, I always had love for the original NES and Master System as well. I had a Master System for a little while with the 3D adapter and Space Harrier 3D. And they were both terrible and not terrible at the same time. But so yeah, like I have like a setup right now with a Sony curved screen CRT and a Super Nintendo, Genesis, NES, Japanese Master System because it's got the FM sound chip built in, and then I have a Mister sitting behind it, and that I'll probably have the rest of my life. No matter what happens, no matter what I end up doing. So those will definitely be it.
Cool, awesome. Sports Talk Football. Okay, you mentioned that one specifically. That's a game I have really fond memories of as well. I actually used to. I had like a tape recorder, and I would record the commentary from that game as I played it, and like add to it. I was pretty young.
That is very funny. But yeah, I think it was Sports Talk Baseball and Joe Montana Football 94 were the ones I was playing. But there was something called Sports Talk Football, right? It
was, I think, the previous. Like, I think Joe Montana might have been the sequel to that, if I remember right. But Joe Montana, because there were two Joe Montana games, one where he was on the 49ers and one on the Chiefs. And the commentary on those games, I can like remember so well, and the compression on the voice and everything. It really sticks. But yeah, I would. You
are correct too. NFL Sports Talk Football 93. That's the one.
Oh, okay.
So the 94 was my favorite of the era, but 93 was the one they actually called Sports Talk Football.
Yeah. I remember how cool it was with the voice. I would even have the computer play each other, just so I could talk along with the commentators. So I don't know. I got my bang for my buck on Sports Talk. Talks Football.
That's funny.
I just remember interception, and it was like so compressed. The way that it was, the way it was
fun though.
Yeah, no, I love. That's a game I wonder if I would still. Have you played it recently?
Since I started RetroRGB, yes, definitely, and I had some fun with it.
Oh, really?
I also enjoyed Tecmo Bowl as well.
Oh, so good.
But that it doesn't quite hold up as well because there just are a few cheesy things you could do to cheat in that if you really wanted to, like play Bo Jackson. But I liked both of those games, and I would still play them every now and then just for fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check. I'll have to check it out. I have not tried that in a while, but really, really fond memories. So we're talking about a lot of good things so far. On the opposite side, what are some of your biggest disappointments? What are some games or consoles that came out that you just were super stoked for and just fell flat for you?
That's a great question. I think when I was a kid, there was probably a ton of games that were very hyped up, or something that I saw at Blockbuster or whatever local game rental place where it had like an awesome title, and I was fired up to get it, and I rented it, and I got it home, and I'm like, I just wasted my money in this game, so my whole weekend is shot. It's a rainy weekend. I can't go out on my bike. I rented this game with the last few dollars I scrounged up from mowing lawns or something, and now this sucks, and I just wasted my money. And those were good lessons to learn. Painful as a little kid when you were expected to be playing a game all weekend, but there's probably a lot of those. But other than that, like, there's been games that came out that I thought were good games, but just had weird stuff about them. Like the Link's Awakening remake, I actually really loved, but there's that weird flicker that happens, that like sparkly flicker. I don't understand why they thought that was a look to have. Or like in what was the 3DS Metroid, the Samus Returns?
Samus Returns, yeah.
Yeah, like that lock-on feature. Like, the way my hands held on to a 3DS, it was very uncomfortable to be able to constantly do that. Because, you're not just holding a controller looking at a screen. You're holding the screen and the controller. So, like, there was a bunch of stuff like that were... I think the best way I could answer that is games that I actually did like, but had something about them that really, to me personally, took away from the game. But I get that to other people, they might have thought that was awesome and not really cared. But yeah, those were the big ones for me, were... disappointments as a kid or as an adult when something's almost as good as I wanted it to be, but not quite.
Yeah. When I would get those games where you'd rent or whatever for a weekend and they were terrible, I would at first think there was something wrong with me. And I would be like, what is it? Like, am I not playing it right? Do I need to play it? Like, do I need to practice more? Like, what is the deal? Why can't I get it to play? I remember for whatever reason, Yo Noid renting that one and getting exceptionally pissed at that one over a weekend. I have not tried it since, but for whatever reason, I remember that one being super frustrating. Not one that I was really looking forward to, but one of the ones that was available to rent. So we talked a little bit about RetroRGB, but you've obviously connected with a lot of great people throughout the years, and it's spawned an
awesome people in this scene.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I messaged you, I was like, you've kind of, I think in a big way spawned this, or at least been a huge part of creating this amazing retro community that for me has made me kind of fall, not that I'd fallen out of love with games, but really get like into games again, almost like I used to be. But what are some of your favorite memories from RetroRGB, things that have happened, people that you've met, or just experiences that have come about because you've started this website?
I mean, the people are absolutely it. I mean, there's been some technical stuff, like first discovering about a one chip. So, because, I wanted as good as a mini, but in the case of the original SNES, like there was a couple of like technical stuff like that, like the triple bypass. But honestly, it's the people that I've been hanging out with that I got to meet, like real actual friends have been made, not just, like internet friends, and the amazing devs I get to work with, the cool stuff that I get to help create. And so the people are absolutely it, without a doubt. And there's just so many fun, awesome people out there. And I think it's very easy to only listen to the loudest voices, which I guess is something you could say about everything in life. So you got to like filter all that crap out and look at the fact that there's the majority of people are awesome. So yeah, the people are absolutely the thing that stand out for RetroRGB.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a force for good, I would say, in our community for sure, which is
I hope so.
Really awesome. It's definitely my honor to have you on here. So
thank you.
So kind of along those lines, we talked about this a little bit before, and I know he talked about it when I was on here, but how did you meet the great Voltar?
Well, I remember right after I started the site, I was on one of the forums, one of the terrible forums, and I saw he had posted something about hooking up a Genesis controller to a Game Gear, because you could do it with a Master System controller very easily. You basically just wire it up. But if you want the Genesis controller with the start button to work as well, you needed to have a different circuit made. And at the time, I was obsessed with getting handhelds to play on CRTs, because I really wanted to, handhelds were great as a kid, but now that you have the space to do this, being able to play it on a CRT was really exciting for me. And in hindsight, after we got all that, some games are actually much better to be played on a handheld. But I saw it and I was like, oh, this guy's such a dick. I don't want to message him at all. And I wrote his DM in the forum thing, and I'm sitting there like, do I hit send? I don't want to deal with this guy. And I hit send, and like the first response back was very Voltar, but helpful. And then every response after, it's basically the same relationship we have now. Fun, silly, good guy. We did a whole podcast together, and he hated how it came out, so he made me delete it. We did a whole other one, and but it didn't feel like repeating the same thing. Like it's just, yeah. So that's what it was. And I've told him that story many times, and he always responds with some sort of amazing insult.
Yeah, that's hilarious. No, it was so much fun to have him on the show here a few months ago now. He's a pretty hilarious guest, so I can imagine the friendship that spawned out of that. And just since we're talking about him, hope he has a recovery. We understand that he's gotten in the hospital recently, so hope that goes.
Yeah, I actually was on the phone with him maybe an hour or two before that happened, and we were laughing, just our usual like nerd chat / make fun of each other and laugh at each other type of thing. And then next thing you know, a couple hours later, I saw Nick posted that on social media, and I was just like, oh crap, I hope he's okay. But also, the last time this happened, his phone immediately blew up. So I was like, I'm going to just give him some space. When you're sick or when you're dealing with a sick family member, for me personally, some of the worst things is just having to explain the same crap to everybody who calls. And I know that they're concerned, and I know that it comes from a place of love, but I'm also a human, and it's like, enough. I don't want to tell the story for the 75th time. I'm fine. I'm not going to die. Leave me alone. So I'm going to give him some space and see. Hopefully it's just a blip.
Yeah, no, I definitely get you with that last thing though. I had something this year and it's like every time you have to explain it, it's like kind of salt in the wound over and over again. And like you, I feel the positive vibes and everything, but sometimes it's just
or just exhausting.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, and then I feel like, because I talk too much anyway, so now it's just like, wait, did I just repeat the same thing? No, it's a different person I'm talking to. Damn it. Like, so. Yeah.
So when I first started the show way back in 2002, one of the reasons I did it is because really the friend I started with, Richie, and I, we were kind of the only two that we could talk about video games with that like the other person would be like, okay, enough. Like we get it. You like video games. You like all this stuff. You're obsessed, whatever. Was that similar to you? Like, did you have a desire to see more like-minded people? Did you already kind of have that group of folks that was obsessed, or how did that work
at
for
the
you?
beginning, absolutely not. No, at the beginning, this was all about me. This was totally selfish. I wanted to have my consoles hooked up to a CRT. That worked, and then I wanted them in RGB, and then I discovered RGB monitors, and this was just all about making sure that I can get the best experience possible to share with cousin Scott and anybody else who's interested. And I didn't expect anybody else to be. I expected this to be something that like a small group of friends that are about the same age would have cared about. But it wasn't until after, when people started jumping on board, that this stuff started, that I started even knowing that people care. But no, at the very beginning, this was just all about like, hey, Scott, remember the thing that we heard about when we were kids, but we were way too poor to even consider?
Yeah, right.
We could do it now. So yeah, it's, you know, that was basically it.
Yeah, a lot of wish fulfillment as a kid. Sometimes I think about, you know, if I could tell my second, third grade, whatever self, the way that things have worked out, that you can pretty much play just about anything you want at any time in like quality that I couldn't have even imagined when I was a kid, is pretty astoundingly amazing. I mean, it's a pretty, and it's thanks to all the people in the community that it's like that too. I mean, you have people fulfilling so many different amazing wants and needs throughout our community, allow us to do all this, including, you know, Voltar. So, and speaking of that, you obviously have covered a gazillion mods and retro things throughout the years. Are there any, you know, that really stand out to you as some of like the absolute ones that have really brought just an amazing amount of enjoyment to you of those mods and various retro contraptions?
I mean, there's two answers. On the personal level, it's the finding out about one chip SNESs and then doing that bypass, so you know, make it basically near perfect. And then of course, you know, the Voltar's Edge Enhancer could do that with two chips now too. And then the triple bypass for Genesis consoles, because you know that was a pretty big deal, because the original Genesis was pretty messy for video but excellent audio. And then you get to like the Genesis 3s, which were actually very good audio and video quality, but only mono, and there was still a little bit of that noise, so you put the bypass in, and now you have basically as good of an analog and video and audio signal as you could reasonably get for something like that. So those, for me personally, I think were the big deals. There were ones that I thought were going to be a big deal, like, you know, the Game Boy Advance on TV ones, but none of those are ever really perfect, because even the ones that were, you still have the black bars on, you know, on some of the sides. But from a general gaming, retro gaming thing, Mister, without a shadow of a doubt, because now you could have all of this stuff in one little box, and it's very, very close to the original, to the point where, you know, it might be just much easier for people to jump in on this. Because, you know, there's those horrible emulation handheld consoles. I just can't stand them. They're mostly complete garbage and just destroy everything about the game. You know, I'm being a little extra harsh, but you know, those things are not the best way for people to experience it. But now you pick up a Mister, and now you could really decide like what's important. Do I just want to play these games? Do I want to integrate original consoles as well for the things that are the most important to me? Is this a blast of nostalgia? Is this something that, you know, so you now have a tool that allows you to basically run those tests on yourself. And if you decide, yeah, you know what, this was fun, but this was just a quick nostalgia trip, I don't need this anymore, you could resell it for very little loss at all, because it's a quality thing. Or you could try to repurpose it for something else. Or I guess even you could say that with the latest version of the Raspberry Pi and some of those hats that connect it to CRTs. But I think those are the biggest deal, because it allows you to do all this stuff before spending all that time and money modding your original consoles. And then each person could decide for themselves what's the most important. You know, like what if you say I grew up with an NES and I live in a city, so if I plug RF into it, you know, it looks terrible. Into a CRT, composite looks fine, but you know, I really just want a clear image, so I played it on Mister and it's basically perfect. So I'm gonna grab the Lumicode mod or Tim's NES RGB mod. And before, there was no way to experience it yourself the right way to see if that's even something you want to go about doing.
Is that the way that you play the majority of your games now on the Mister, or do you play original hardware? Like if you're just sitting down, you want to play a game, how do you do it now?
For my favorite consoles, it's a mix. So Mister is usually my go-to first, but depending on what I'm looking to do, like light guns just work easier on original consoles, and you know, stuff like Master System 3D games. But yeah, generally speaking now, Mister is my go-to for most things.
Awesome. Very cool. I built one with my son during COVID, in 2020, basically because of your videos, because he'd played some of these old arcade games at his summer camp, Dig Dug and a few others. And it was a fun way to build something together and then kind of have that same experience that he'd had in the arcade with these cool old games. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked a lot about games. I know that you're into music as well. You said that you play guitar, or you played guitar. How did that come about? Did you play a lot growing up?
Yeah, I learned how to play. I took lessons when I was 13, something like that. But yeah, I just from then on, I just always kind of played. And then my life was kind of backwards. At 19, I got like a corporate job, and you know, while I was still going to college, night school and stuff like that. And I swung back around in my 30s, and then, you know, got heavy into guitar. I was always playing, but not at this level. And, you know, joined a couple of different bands and really had a whole lot of fun, wrote some songs and played them. But when you start to play like metal, like actual, like hard, complicated songs, you got to keep your chops up. You can't, it's not like singing Kumbaya around a fire. You can't just pick up your acoustic guitar once a year and strum a couple chords. Like you know, so I kind of lost touch in that, and I miss it a lot. But it's also like, you know, if I could flip a switch right now and just, you know, join another band and start writing more songs, like I don't want to spend weekends sitting in an empty bar to a crappy gig, you know, doing that whole, you know, build up your brand again thing. That was a lot of work, and it's soul sucking when it all goes crashing down. So hopefully someday I'll have more time to just play casually now and then. But writing songs, playing live, like there was almost no greater feeling than we would open for bigger bands, and you know, the lights would come on and the crowd would see us and go, ugh, and go to the bar. And by the fourth song, half the place came back up. Like, you earned that. If you suck, awesome, no one's going to come back up to see you. They're going to stay at the bar until you're off stage. So that was always just the best feeling, is playing the songs that I wanted to play, that I loved playing, that I wrote with good people, and getting the crowd into it as well. Like that's amazing. And I don't think there's any chance of me doing that again. Besides, I'm fat and old. Who the hell wants to see me up on stage?
I'd see you rock out. Can we hear those anywhere? Are they up online anywhere, or?
Yeah, the first glorified demo / album is up. That kind of the place that we went to did a very good job, but I was looking for a real album, and we kind of just compromised, and it was the most expensive demo ever made, basically. But yeah, that's that's up there.
What's it called?
The band was 2 weeks. No, not after the All That Remains song, is an inside joke in the band, but yeah. So I'll leave a link for you, but all the songs are there if you want to hear them. And the second album's like 90% written. It would be a lot to record that, especially now after barely playing for over a year. Like, I honestly don't know if I could do it. But I did a fun thing a couple of years ago with a buddy of mine too. That was kind of like, over the years, I've quit playing guitar a couple times, and one of my friends always ends up accidentally dragging me back in, and that was one of them. My buddy Mark, Music with Marky on YouTube. He was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna send you this track. Could you record something for it?" And or a drum track. And he's a phenomenal lead guitarist. And I was like, "Oh, dude, I don't really play anymore. I don't know." So I waited until I knew I had some time. I plugged my guitar in to the, my Motu M4, which I'm using right now, but still I use that for guitar stuff too. And I was like, all right, let me just play this track and see. And as soon as the drums kicked in, like I just heard it. And I went, oh, I could do this. And then, that's what you see. And I sent it to him and he's like, how the hell am I going to solo over that? I'm like, dude, you know what you were getting when you sent me a drum track. So, I thought it came out pretty cool. And I asked my buddy Kendall, who's a pro drummer, tours the world with a bunch of amazing bands.
Awesome.
I asked him to just whip up the drum track to it. And he was like, yeah, you got it, buddy. And sent it right over. And I believe Ronnie played bass on that one. I'm pretty sure he played bass on he might have played bass on that one. I can't remember. He definitely did the Terminator theme when I did that one. That was a blast. It wasn't very hard, but that was a blast to do. But now, wow, geez, I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember if he was on the other one. Oh, I think so.
That's super. That's super. So what style of, it's metal, but what style of metal is it? Thrash? Is it?
My band that I was in was like hard rock metal with singing, no screaming. And the last two tracks we did were just instrumental anyway. The Terminator theme song and instrumental with the lead guitarist soloing over it.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
remind me at the end. I'll send you links to all of that stuff.
No, I'm super stoked.
The ones I did with Ronnie are fun. That video we did for the CDI live stream, that was so much fun. Ronnie shooting all the footage of the flicking off the different consoles and Yahel from Wrestling with Gaming doing the Terminator style HUD thing for it. Like that was one of the most fun things I'd ever been a part of. That sounds
so cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I grew up as a drummer. I did all the contests and did lessons and all that and played drums for quite a while. And then and all metal was what got me into it. I wasn't super into it until I started hearing metal drummers, because I just love double bass and I love all the heavy type stuff. And then I started I got a guitar and I play just for fun, obviously not, at your level or people like that, but just so I have something to play drums with a lot of times. But what kind of music do you listen to then? Is it the same type of heavy music?
I genuinely listen to everything, but my favorites are metal, pop, and rap, but and especially like old school 90s rap that I grew up with. That G-funk stuff is just, to me, Warren to my ears, totally still holds up 100%. But yeah, those I genuinely would listen to anything though, but those are my favorite.
Any favorite bands?
In Flames and Megadeth have been my favorite bands forever. Nice. Megadeth. When I was a little kid, I knew I loved music, and I thought I wanted to be a singer because I didn't know anything else. And then I saw Slash walk up on the piano for the November Rain solo, and I was like, I think I want to play guitar. And then I heard the Rust in Peace album, and I was like, no, I need to play guitar.
This awesome.
Isn't a think. Like, this is in my veins. And so Megadeth got me to play, and then one of my friends introduced me to In Flames in like 2000.
Yeah.
And I've seen them almost 30 times now live.
Oh, nice.
I used to be able to play at least half of their songs. So it's
wow, that's awesome. You are good.
Love
then.
That band
because those are not easy songs.
Now I totally suck. But
that's really cool. I didn't know a lot of that. That's really rad to hear. We'll close out the music discussion here, but any favorite live music memories? There's nothing like live music, both listening and playing. I agree with you. But are there either concerts that you attended or concerts that you played? What's like a favorite experience?
Well, there's a couple that absolutely stand out. My cousin Nick used to come to shows with me all the time, and we saw In Flames open for Iced Earth right after we discovered In Flames via my friend. And we expected to be there for Iced Earth, and In Flames comes out to the Star Wars theme song. The lights come on, they wave, and then started playing and cut right into Bullet Ride. And it was just, they were so good that we left halfway through Iced Earth. We were just like, they could not hold up that, at least that night on the tour, but that one blew me away. And that's kind of a personal one. If you don't like the band, obviously, if you don't like that kind of music, that means nothing to you. But cousin Scott and I went to see Rammstein for the first time. And I'd seen it on TV and stuff, and I kind of thought I had an idea of what it was, but I had no clue. We made our way sort of close to the stage, and there was the song Führer Frei, and there was that little keyboard breakdown, and I see them like going off to the side of the stage, and they're like putting on masks and stuff, and I'm like, all right, I get it. It's part of their stage costume. Like, all right, it's kind of cheesy. And they go back on stage, and they were blowing flames out of their face that was longer than they were tall. And Scott and I grabbed each other like a bunch of children. We were in our late 20s. We were like, flamethrower faces, flamethrower faces. Like, they lit everything on fire. I don't think I could ever have any concert experience top that. And I mean, every year they kind of got a little bit bigger, like that song Sonne, my German friends, I'm sorry, I know I'm murdering the pronunciation, but the chorus is basically "Here Comes the Sun." And I saw him at Jones Beach a couple years after that, and I felt something on the back of my head, and I was like 5-6 feet from the stage. I was as close as you could get in like I paid for the VIP pit and everything. I'm like, why does the back of my head feel? And I look back, and they set the towers on fire in the back of Jones Beach. So it wasn't just like, it wasn't just for the people in the middle and the front. The whole place was on fire. So yeah, I don't think those, for me personally, experiences could ever be topped, especially the Rammstein one.
It's hard to top fire.
Yeah.
That's pretty rad.
But it wasn't just a cheesy gimmick. Like, they really integrated it perfectly into the whole thing. So
that's awesome. That sounds really rad. Well, so back to games a little bit here. So right now, are you playing anything right now?
No, I don't unfortunately have any time. I still have RZ that I really want to play that I just hadn't had time for. I met Seth in person the other day at PAX East, and I was busting his chops because I had set aside like 3 full days to play it on its release date. And I assumed I was going to be getting it on a release date, but apparently when you buy special editions from limited run games, you get the worst treatment, and it didn't come for like 6-7 months later. So I still haven't played it. By the time it showed up, I had a whole bunch of other crazy stuff to do. But and the other new Zelda game that came out, new a year ago, what was it? Not Tears of the Kingdom. The what was the other one? The Switch game, like retro style. Like everybody's listening is going to know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I know. I can see it in my head.
Yeah, those two are the ones that I'm waiting to play. And if you see me play anything on live streams, that's that would be the only other thing. But I do like, those live streams are fun because I get to demo new and crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I also actually get to play games. So like the developer Infidelity does those NES to SNES hacks. Same thing with the developer Rumble Mints, and I've been digging those. So I'll do live streams of those when I get a chance to. And it's very cool to see the differences between the NES and the SNES versions.
Awesome. Is Echoes of Wisdom, is that the one you're talking about?
That's going to be the one.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So you don't doing RetroRGB, has it made playing games less fun for you, or is it just the time aspect?
No, it's just the time. And I always had a pretty balanced life, so no disrespect to anybody who was mostly a gamer, but like for me, it's always just been a part of many other things, and I'd always rather be outside than inside. I always was like that, which is weird for a fat guy. You think I always just want to sit on a couch and, eat chips and play video games. But how often I play games, if it wasn't for the, time constraints, like it's just one of many hobbies that I really enjoy. And I just, no, it hasn't affected it in a negative way. Although some games I don't think I'll ever actually play because I only use them for testing. Like, I think I've played the first level of Bonk's Adventure probably 1,000 times just for all the different capture footage and stuff that I have to do, which is why, other than the Link shot, just the still picture of Link in the house, I try to never use those games. And the one scene from Super Mario World, but I don't play those games in testing because I don't want to ruin it for me like I've done a couple other games. But other than those scenarios, they're like my go-to to actually have to play it to test, then no, it's, I still like it just as much.
Cool. That's awesome. That's good to hear. So we've mentioned Zelda several times. I've been trying to get through Skyward Sword lately. Have you played Skyward Sword?
Yeah, funny enough. So that job that I had to sit around and wait all the time, they used to do a mandatory morning meeting that would be from 8:30 to sometimes almost noon.
Oh my God.
And it was relevant. Maybe 5% of it was relevant to me, but everybody had to be on it. And so I would play that game with my, like with the headset on and on mute. So like my conference call would be on mute. And every time they asked me a question, I'd pause the game, I'd mute the TV, and I'd just be like, hey, sorry, I was on mute. So, you didn't hear me coughing. But yeah, and I would answer whatever question that was related to me and wait for them to move on. And then I'd unpause the game. And that's how I played 90% of that game. Yeah.
That's odd. They didn't see you waggling around with the...
No, it was audio only back then.
Oh.
I mean, I think we did have video chats, but I don't think they cared enough to do that. So it was just, we were all on just a conference call every morning, and it was so boring and such a waste. And one of the lead devs just lost his shit one morning and freaked out. Like, do you know how much of my time we're wasting? I have to make up for this after everybody else, stops working. It was absolutely hilarious. And so then that ended that. But I'd already beaten the game, so... Yeah.
Nice. We got a couple comments in here. Blue Gamer says the terrible weekend rentals, one a vibe that doesn't exist anymore. Rumble Minzy, I think, gives us a heart.
Mints. Yeah, that's the NES to SNES dev. Met him in person last year at Retro World. Awesome guy. So hopefully he'll come back again this year. But
cool. Thanks for watching. And then Jack Burton, who's one of our normal hosts, says Skyward Sword is so repetitive. Not a bad game, but it really goes like 10 hours long and didn't have enough variety. Did you like Skyward Sword? What are your feelings on it?
So funny enough, when you had asked before about like bad experiences, one of the things that came to mind was how much I loved that game until it turned into a fetch quest.
Yeah.
Because at one point it was like, okay, go back to every single world and just find this thing that has no bearing to the story, that you don't actually need. You don't get powered up. You don't get any. And that's when I was like, oh, they finished the game and thought, we need it to be longer because longer games sell more. And that was really disappointing. And I wish that wasn't part of the game. I would have liked it a lot more if it wasn't. But other than that, no, I actually did like the game.
Yeah, see that both Skyward Sword and Majora's Mask, and I'm trying to beat Majora's Mask now for sure. Those are the only two Zelda games I have not beaten. And Skyward Sword I'm struggling with. I do not like the sword controls. I do not. I'm playing it on the Switch. So I don't know if that makes a difference. And I'm using the Joy-Cons because people say that's the way to do it. But I just can't. I every time I have to fight somebody, I'm just kind of like, oh, I wish I could just push a button.
I used it with the Wii's Motion Plus controller, and I found that most of the time it was fine, but I would have liked a lot more fine control. Especially that one scene where you're supposed to like... it's like a side quest thing where you're supposed to slash the wood. No, not a side quest, but like one of those little side games, and you gotta slash the wood fast enough. Like, I probably did that 100 times in a row and finally got it. And when I actually got it, there was no difference between the last couple of times I tried it. I think it was one of those things where if the Wii Motion Plus controller could be a lot more accurate, a lot of those things would have been better. But I also don't know what that would have taken away from the game. Maybe there were some times that were easy because it wasn't so accurate. So yeah, that didn't bother me so much, but it's definitely something that I noticed.
Well, I'm hopefully can get through it. We'll see. It's getting a little, I don't know. We'll see. But we're getting here fairly close to the end. Thank you so much for is there anything that you'd like to say before we kind of head off into the sunset?
No, I talk too much as it is. But just thanks for having me on, and just so many amazing people in the scene, and just thank you to everybody that always hangs out, and it's very cool.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you came on to talk here today. It was a lot of fun chatting with you, hearing a little bit more about RetroRGB, yourself, and then the music stuff was really interesting because I knew I'd seen like a little bit of like your guitars, I think, and some stuff, but I didn't know that you played in a band and had an album out and all that sort of stuff. So that was really cool to hear. So thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah, I love talking about that stuff, and I'll leave links to everything right after this is over, so that way I don't forget. But the ones I did with Ronnie are I mean, I even think retro fans would like them, even if you're not into metal. And they're instrumental, so there you go.
Awesome!
Makes it even easier. But
Very cool. Well, catch us on our normal time. Usually we're Wednesdays at 9 Central. We'll be on with Blue Gamer, who's been commenting today, tomorrow, which we're excited to have. And thank you so much for listening to the game show, and we'll see you tomorrow.
take care.